If I had died on my way home that day, I would have been fulfilled. Which is the reason why I'm excited about being on stage. And I'm excited about the potential of a difference that we can make. So every time you get an opportunity to speak to people, remember that story. You could make a lifetime difference in someone else. Thank you.
Thank you, Lionel. Good job. Be sure to compliment Lionel on his new pajamas that his mom sent him. It's beautiful, very beautiful.
I have a story on that. Maybe some other time I'll tell that story.
Another
Thank
time.
you.
Very good. I believe the message he gave us is timely. I think we're all in that point where we're learning to be better speakers so that we can impact people with our message. Edmund Brooke, I believe, said it the best. He was talking about the evil in the world, and he was a member of the British Parliament in the 1700s, and he said this. He says, "The only thing necessary for evil to prevail and to triumph is for good men and women to sit back and do nothing."
Yeah.
We have a voice, we have a message, and like Lionel says, that was $1 million hug, wasn't it? We're all here because we have a voice, we have something to say, and we have more good messages to come. Is this your phone, Lionel?
No, that's
It's a
for
prop.
me.
Very good. You can stay there then. I just wanted to
Thank
be
you.
nice for our next speaker. Our next speaker is Bobby Hall. Bobby Hall was born and raised in Texas. She has a Bachelor's of Arts in Fashion and Merchandising. Bobby's an expert on perseverance and not giving up. The theme of today, I think.
Yeah.
Forced to overcome adversity from an early age, she spent years making bad choices and paid grim consequences. After falling hard, Bobby chose to find faith, and her life took a sizable change of direction. Bobby is a volunteer speaker for Youth Motivational Task Force and speaks to students about the importance of getting an education and making wise choices. If you want to be successful, you need to make wise choices. Bobby is an emerging speaker, owns a company, My Granny's Cookies. Did you bring some?
Too hot to bake,
Okay, they would have melted.
but otherwise I would have.
It's her cookie company. Bobby is a self-published author, and I looked up her book. It was a book on quotes. Wonderful. If you get a chance, download it, or I mean, buy it from Amazon.
Thank you.
It's called. No, I'll let you introduce it.
You'll see.
I looked it up because I wanted to know what
Aw.
we were dealing with here.
Oh, nice.
She's a self-published author and singer, and that right there is quite a task. She's a singer and songwriter. Keep your eye out for her upcoming New York Times best-selling books sharing her story. Please welcome our next speaker, Bobby Hall.
I didn't get the name right. Okay. Oh my goodness. Hello? I'm gonna have to call you back. How many of you love your cell phones? Yeah? Right?
No.
Oh. Good for you, Mary. I know technology, right? It makes it makes life so much easier and convenient. We text and we swipe and we scroll and we're checking the news real time, we're talking to each other. If we get lost, we check our GPS and we can shop online. Did you know that college students are connected to up to 4 devices at one time? And all that multitasking? We all do a lot of multitasking. Who multitasks a lot?
Oh, God.
I catch myself all the time. Multitasking erodes productivity. Newsflash. Aha. Can you imagine what this is doing to our brains? We are now a society that is ensconced in our phones, our devices, iPads, iPhones, laptops, desktops, and we're immersed in listening to YouTubes and watching YouTubes and iTunes and doing the internet and social media, and we're texting each other and we're taking selfies. And we have cast away conversation. And we're turning to our devices. Is this an opportunity, or are we overwhelmed? Now, I recently went on a trip, and I noticed at the airport, everybody's on their phones. And I don't care if you're going 0 miles an hour down PCH in 5 o'clock traffic, or 80 miles an hour on the 55, or at a stoplight, everybody's checking their phones. And at events like concerts and football games, everybody's so busy taking pictures, they're not enjoying the moment. And I've also noticed that when I'm with certain people, they're constantly checking their phone. Really? And at 24-Hour Fitness, I go there a lot, practice my speeches on the treadmill, and all the employees are like this. And how about those people at the grocery store? We can all relate to this. You're in the checkout line, and all of a sudden they got to solve world peace with whoever on their cell phone in the checkout line, right? And also at the library, I have noticed that, well, I thought that's where we read books, but most people are connected to some kind of device. There's a park across the street from where I live, and there's a walking trail, and I go around it all the time. And one day, at this playground area, I see 2 little babies with Huggies diapers ready to go off a ledge, and the adult that was with them was like this. And then one day I went to Target to return something, and I literally stood there and watched 3 customer service people like this before they noticed me.
Serious.
You got it. And people are now bringing their phones to yoga class. Okay? I find this disturbing. It infuriates me. Isn't conversation and eye contact the portal to us connecting as humans? The mere presence of a phone now is changing conversations and our relationships. Studies show that people are checking their phones over 150 times a day, and they're connecting within 5 minutes of waking up. Young people are sending over 100 texts a day. 80% go to bed with their phones, and 44% never disconnect. It's very dry outside. I know, it's just absolutely unbelievable. Sherry Turkle, who's a psychologist, she wrote a book called Reclaiming Conversation. And she says, we text and we post and we chat, but we would rather send an email message or an electronic message than commit to a face-to-face conversation. And we're turning our backs on each other and turning to our devices. And this mediated life has gotten us into trouble. We're sacrificing our relationships. People aren't empathetic toward one another anymore. We're not spending time in the quiet and the solitude. It's hurting our kids, especially, or anyone trying to learn something, getting an education. It's hurting us in the workplace, at our jobs. And worse, it's killing our kids. What we need to be doing is showing a genuine interest in one another, seeking to understand. Habit number 7, Stephen Covey's Highly Effective People, and we need to be listening for, watching for those nonverbal cues, facial expressions that show us how others are feeling. Now, I like to think of this as spiritual hospitality. By the way, we should all download that new app. Have you heard of it? The new app? It's called Respect.
Oh. Yes, I heard of it.
Now, does anybody, well, silly question how I ask like that. Are we all familiar with the Brady Bunch? Some people are, some people aren't. I guarantee you I've watched every episode probably 10 times each. It was a show on TV filmed 1969 to 1974. And it was a mom and dad and a blended family, 3 boys and 3 girls. There's a story of a man named Brady. They didn't have iPhones back then. And they engaged in conversation with each other every single day. Parents with kids. Do you think it's a coincidence that there's been a rise in playground accidents and a rise in cell phone use?
Oh, yeah.
Okay? And research proves that when kids sit down with their parents, parents with their kids, let's say at dinner time, and engage their kids and show an interest in their lives, they're less likely to do drugs and alcohol, get pregnant, and they always do better in school. Parents need to necessitate conversation and show an interest in kids' lives. Nowadays, parents are immersed in their phones so much, kids don't feel like they're worth their parents' time. Now, who's familiar with the term phubbing?
Who?
Phubbing. P-H-U-B-B-I-N-G. Thank you for asking. Phubbing.
Never heard of
Don't
it.
know what.
Okay,
phubbing is.
you're going to learn.
Phubbing.
Phubbing is when you turn away from who you're talking to, snub someone for your phone. I know. Thank you. Baylor University recently conducted a study that shows this leads to conflict in relationships and then leads to depression in relationships. You think? That's when we need to access that new app called Respect. Now, recent studies are definitely revealing that the empathy markers for empathy have decreased 40% in college students. I personally, this last couple of years has been the darkest, most challenging, horrific time in my life. And I have seen and experienced a huge gap between people's ability to show empathy. I can hear it in the phone, through the phone when I'm talking to somebody on the phone or when I'm face to face. I've really noticed it's almost like people aren't listening and boy, they sure don't care. And the studies are showing that it's because they're hyper connected to all of their devices. Now, as Lionel just described and it illustrated for us a beautiful story of that young kid, do you all here really think that an emoji, sad face with tears coming down its face is really going to provide the kind of comfort that a hug does when someone's going through a time of despair? Now, who knows Emily Post? The etiquette guru. Guru, I'm not saying that right. Guru of the 19th century. I guarantee you, she is rooted in her grave right now, knowing that face-to-face conversation has decreased 68%. We need to start watching for those facial expressions that tell us how people are feeling so that we can provide empathy. Quiet. solitude. That's where we get to know ourselves. And solitude is where we foster creativity and innovation. Now, in terms of quiet and getting to know ourselves, especially our kids need quiet and solitude. A 19th century sculptor, his name was Jean Arp. In 1886, he was born. Here's what he said. Think of it, 1886 he was born. Man has turned his back on silence because man keeps inventing machines and gadgets that increase the noise and distract us from our humanity and the essence of life, contemplation, and meditation. Now, we're all Californians. Hello. There's 840 miles of beach out there. What better place than to sit alone with your thoughts and contemplate and meditate? I believe Steven Spielberg, a successful filmmaker, said, technology, yeah, it can be our best friend, but it can be the worst party pooper of our lives because it interrupts our story and our ability to think and to dream and to imagine something wonderful because we're too darn busy bridging that gap from the cafeteria back to our desks to check our messages. Again, studies are showing that college students are connected to up to 4 devices at a time. Pew Research Center recently conducted a study that's revealing this reality. And what's happening with the news feed at the bottom, they're checking their likes on Facebook and their followers on Twitter and their thumbs up on their posts. And I don't care if you're a college student or one of us in a training or a workshop or at church. If you're connected to your devices, it thwarts us from retaining information. And all this multitasking isn't doing anyone any good. We all need to be unit tasking versus multitasking. I was sharing this topic with someone recently, and he got excited and he said, "Oh my gosh, I can so relate. I'm in sales, Bobby, and I have to nurture relationships with people, and nobody wants to talk to me anymore. No face-to-face conversations, they just want to shoot me an email." And nowadays, employees are holed up in their cubes like pilots in a cockpit, facing the computer, iPad over here, iPhone over here, and whatever else device, and they've got headphones on. And when a coworker walks by, the message they're sending is, "Don't be talking to me." And in the conference rooms, forget conference room meetings. Those days are bye-bye. Because everyone is so hyper-connected, they are not listening at the meetings. Companies should post signs that say, "Cell phone free zone." Put them next to those labor law posters in the HR and in the cafeteria, the break rooms, and the copy rooms. I thought teamwork and collaboration is what helped companies be successful. Posting those posters, and when an employee pulls out their phone, they should write them up. Teen suicide has doubled from 2007 to current. And I would like to know how, when teens are so immersed in their phones, gaming, doing Facebook, again, the postings and seeing who likes their postings, how many followers they're getting, how many friends they're getting on Facebook. How in the world does this cultivate self-confidence, value of who they are, and are those really friends? And what about life skills like perseverance and resolve that teach us how to get through difficult times? And God forbid, these young kids have to go on a job interview and use eye contact and a firm handshake and sell themselves. Clifford Nass, who is an expert who does research to find out how technology is affecting kids, and he says social media does not teach kids life lessons. People do. Do y'all remember the 80s hair bands and video games? Yeah? That's what parents were worried about back in those days. This is where parents come in. Parents need to inculcate in their kids a healthy mindset of the use for technology. And they need to establish boundaries and limits. Put off getting their kids a phone as long as possible, and disable the social media and only leave texting and calling, so when if they have an emergency, they can call their parents. And don't allow kids to take their phones in the bedroom at night. Sleep and phones don't mix. But that's where parents come in, setting those boundaries, creating a healthy mindset. We need to disconnect so we can connect as humans. We are all possessed by our phones and doing way too much multitasking. Now, if you could take one of these and pass it down. I am going to share with you well, before I do that, I'm going to say this. Here's the key to all this, is establishing a balance, actualizing a balance in what technology is useful for and when to unplug. And I'll share with you activities, non-technology activities that I've been doing for years. Years ago, I joined Toastmasters. I wanted to improve my communication skills and my leadership skills. And tonight is a result of that. And I started reading years ago. I've always been a book reader, but now I'm an incessant book reader. And of course, with reading, you increase your vocabulary. I can't wait to get my word for the day every day. And I also do volunteer work. I do that intermittently through the years, but now I'm involved in the Youth Motivation Task Force, and I go to high schools and encourage them to definitely stay in school and get a college education, which is the foundation for success. And years ago, I was curious about starting my own business, or what it meant to be an entrepreneur. And I came across an organization called SCORE and took 18 free workshops. And that's kind of where